Well, internal party politics, specifically of the All Progressives Congress, is at the front burner of our discussions this morning. And we have with us in the studio two gentlemen. I don't know why they're always men, but two gentlemen this morning to, help dice the matter. We have with us Ibrahim Modibo, who is a party stalwart of the APC, that's the All Progressives Congress, and also a political analyst. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much, Maupe.
And sitting right next to him is Mr. Muazu Magaji, who is a former member of the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily as well.
Thanks for having me.
So we saw that surprise list. I don't know whether it was a surprise schedule that was released. I don't know whether it came as a surprise to you gentlemen as well. But it looks like the sale of forms have about to begin tomorrow. And I don't know, was this predicted? Did you think it was going to come upon you like a thief in the night? This day of, let's say, the schedule.
The schedules of the
yes.
state congresses?
Yes, indeed.
Well, obviously, we are in a transition. And the transition means that we have to fill all the vacant positions of the party positions from ward level all the way to national. And there were a lot of issues related to the legality, illegality, or the timetable, the process, the timing. But we have to do it. And we have to do it before the year runs out. So for me, it's a bit of a surprise because there were no speculations, there were no rumors, there were no leakages, and it came out, bam. And this is the most strategic step towards consolidating the party and basically coordinating it for another success in coming election. We get this right, we will get the next election right.
Do you think that a surprise sometimes helps the process of transparency?
Well, it does. It goes a long way to help the process. And I want to state here that without any fear of contradiction, APC is on the line of transition, moving from the caretaker committeeship to a full-blown executive of the party in the country. You see, we are trying to put in a formidable structure based on the democratic process or norms of democracy, where the party stalwarts, supporters, and our stakeholders have a say in democratic governance. That is why you find out that in all the congresses so far done, the ward and the local government congresses, it has been very peaceful. If I were to score it, I'll give it about 98 to 99%. Although you know for sure that a political party is not like a mosque or a church, where you have the imam or the chief priest at the helm of affairs with people sitting down to listen to sermons without any opposition. They must be rancorous, because of the interest. And you see, this party is vital, and it's as virile as a stallion. That's why you see people coming in.
In spite of that, 90%, a lot of people will say is rather generous, especially when you consider the number of states. I mean, if you had said 75%, I would have said, well, perhaps. I mean, if you were to look at it in terms of how many states had rancor vis-a-vis how many were peaceful, some might say maybe you could be correct, but 90 is rather on the high side when you look at the number of states. I mean, look at this. We understand that it didn't hold in some states, and some states had a lot of rancor. I'm trying to look for the states now. Osun, Kwara, Enugu, Oyo, Ondo, Zamfara. This is a state, even Delta. And even in some places, recently the Kaduna elections, local government elections were just concluded. And speaking with the governor of the state on the new process that was adopted there, seeing that wards were lost to the opposition party in the state, he says he believes it's a fallout of the congresses. The people were not happy with imposition of candidates. So if you say that it was peaceful, maybe at some level it was, but at the grassroots, in some places, it was, a fight to the finish. And in some places, they have still not finished the fight. I don't know. Are you very confident going into the state congresses in this state? Let me ask you, Mr. Magaji.
Well, I will rather err on the side of caution. I will say that I will give the process 60%, to be honest, because this is my reason. there are states that have surfaced with their challenges and problems. I mean, we just finished listening to Kano, and you haven't even mentioned Kano in your list.
Indeed.
And there are a lot of issues that have been buried. So there are some silence that are silence of the graveyard. And it is very important that we understand that the transition, it's also generational. And if you look at the young people that are talking on TV about most of the issues, they are much younger than the old generations of APC members. So if we don't recognize that there is a transition of time and age in our party, and the need to refresh the party and give new players more dynamism, then we will only go through the motion of replacing people with old ideas and with the same team, basically not exciting the population that will vote for us. This is my problem. At local government level, what I have come to understand was that most of this process were stage managed. And if you try to stage manage democracy, it will boomerang when you come to face the real election with opposition members. That is not to say the other parties don't have their own problem, but you don't gauge your success by a problem. You gauge your success by a standard. This democracy have a rule of the game. And the rule says that it's not an aristocratic institution where you inherit positions. Neither is it meant to be an appointment, nor an imposition. So most of the processes going on are patching up our challenges. And my fear is, by the time we've finished, and then many of our stakeholders realize they do not have a space, there will be a serious outcome that may not be very good for our party. The other thing I also noticed is that there is a generational discussion around 1999 politicians who were basically transitional politicians from the military who are still in the party. Then 2009 politicians who emerged after the 2 terms of the first set of politicians. Then 2019. There are 3 generations of political actors in our party. And we need to decide who are going to excite the base. This is democracy. We are talking about election here. We're not talking about favors or giving people privilege or position.
You've made reference to those who might be left out in the cold after this process is over. Wouldn't they accept it anyway if the process was seen to be free and fair and that, you know, they lost out fairly?
So that is the challenge of democracy. It is the process that guarantees stability of the party as an institution. And I can tell you, a lot of the things going on at state level now are not fairly and equitably carried out. If you read all the complaints of all these warring functions, there is always a major political player who have total control of the party, who will say, this is what I want, or this is who I want. The unfortunate part of our party transition was that it started as a progressive party, as a challenge to a party that dominated the polity and deciding what they want to achieve in a manner that is undemocratic. We gained the confidence of the general public and got into power after several attempts. We got into power through a merger of progressive elements in the polity. And today, I can tell you, we are almost copying exactly the process that led to the fall of the other party. And I think that is not good. I need to say this very clearly. We need to change the way we produce our leaders in a fair, open, transparent, and democratic manner.
Let me quickly ask you, sir, do you agree with him first?
Well, you see, I always concur with the philosophical details of Marcus Aurelius, who stated, that philosopher and also a Roman emperor, who stated that the opinion of 10,000 men might not be of any significance, inasmuch as none of them knows the subject. In this case, I want to believe that as a researcher, I went into research as part of the research team, or I am part of the research team that have been monitoring the events of the APC since the congresses have begun. In fact, even from the beginning, when there has been this rancorous adventure within the party on the kind of interpretation of the courts, how it's going to fare under the caretaker committee and what have you. Now, you see, the issue of this accord or concord, or the issue of allowing people to go and sort themselves out and come out with candidates is a very fundamental issue in democracy. Agreed. The democracy entails going out to vote and be voted for. But in a situation where Democrats within a particular party, not outside, will sit down and iron out their issues based on consensus, it's a very wonderful idea, very novel, very wonderful idea, because it tries to safeguard the party against
So
schisms.
if they agree on consensus candidates,
Yes.
and you've said that there's nothing wrong with that,
Yes.
why can't they ratify it through an election? To say, you know, even if it was just a ceremonial election, if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
We have agreed that this is the person that we will present, or this is the person that is the candidate of, you know, going to be the candidate at our level. To ratify this, let us all come forward and vote for this singular person. What's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with it. But you see, the APC as a political party is very open, very transparent in its undoings. That is why it has set up these committees, you know, of these committees that has to inquire, you know, look at the issues dispassionately and then try to mediate in areas where there's crisis. The appeal committee. So therefore, with what is happening today, I can assure you, in a political party is a normal thing. The process of having internal party mechanism for resolving conflict is where the APC has an edge. And therefore, we strongly believe that yes, there are all brigades in the party that started politicking from 1999. There are some that came in 2019. And also now the young breeds who are very desperate in trying to capture power, whether by any means. They're also there. And all of them, they have the fundamental right to acquire, to go to seek for power. Therefore, it is a normal tradition in any political party. It's a normal thing for people to hustle because these are issues based on interest. In politicking, interest is very paramount and very fundamental. And therefore, we believe that in APC as a political party, we have that internal mechanism for conflict resolution. And I think all these things are normal. There is no party in the world over, that you don't find this kind of recurrent situation where people will protest. It is not a mosque, as I've said, or a church, where people will not protest. It's a political party, and it's all about interest. Therefore, we strongly believe that with time, these problems will come to be healed, and in this circumstance...
With time?
Yes.
Well, it has not always shown that, I mean, that hasn't always been the case. I mean, if your colleague here is already saying that, you know, the signs that we're seeing within the APC were the signs we saw in the PDP, which eventually led to its, you know, breaking up well, not breaking up, but the problems that saw it out of power. You know, and you already seen the same signs in your own political party. Shouldn't you be careful? Shouldn't you be afraid and see how you can, you know, guard against this and perhaps a difficult path, but the path of democracy, true democracy, where the system will really throw up, you know, those who are popular amongst the party and those who will carry the base?
If you look at Magwe, on daily basis, we've been having converts from the PDP and other parties into APC. Why? Because they've seen the light at the end of the tunnel.
The PDP too has been having converts.
Yes, no, but if you look at the torrents, the kind of influx of people from the PDP, never in the history of modern democracy have we seen such torrents, such, you know, movement of people from one political party en masse to another. And therefore, we strongly believe that this is a party to beat. In the next election, I can assure you, Mwakwe, take me for my words, that the APC is a formidable political party, despite these rancors, which is a normal tradition in politicking. I strongly believe that. Look, because there has been rancor, does it mean that we are going to abandon the party or we are going to scatter? It's not going to be. We are looking forward to a formidable party that is likely to rule this country for the next 10, 20, or 30 years.
We've seen how Ranka cost you the ticket in Zamfara, how you won elections there, and how eventually, because of the divisions, the ticket was given to the opposition. In Rivers State, you couldn't field a candidate to the 2019 elections. These are critical, let's say, solid examples of what rancor within the political party has cost you. You have not been able to, mend fences in such a way that you were even able to put forward a common front. Political interest was not even able to, come together, coalesce, so to speak, to, put forward a common front. And yet you say that as you go into and you're seeing more rancor, you are very confident that, magically it will seem, you're almost seeming to want to paper over the cracks as you go into the state congresses.
Mark Way, let me assure you, during the time of Adams Oshimole, there has been this, tight-fisted and, so to say, democracy based on this kind of hard tackles, so to say.
You want to blame it on the past chairman now?
Of course. You see, the leadership of a party determines the outcome. Now we have Mai Mala Buni, a grassroots mobilizer, a liberal Democrat, and also a Democrat of conscience that has been able to move out to get a lot of people into this party. As of today, maybe in the next 1 year or so, this party will also be overblown. We might also not even need people because we'll be satisfied that we have a lot to win any election.
Okay.
And therefore...
Well, the people that you're winning into the party are also a cause of concern. We see what is also happening in Zamfara right now.
We will tackle it.
Okay.
I promise you that APC is a world party. We have internal party mechanism of conflict resolution.
My colleague always says that politicians are forever optimistic. So let us see. I mean, you said we will tackle it. But
yes,
let me ask you, how big a stabilization force would you say that President Muhammadu Buhari has been on your party? And, do you fear that as you go into the elections in 2023, not having him on the ballot could negatively impact the unity, this, at least the face of unity which you seem to currently enjoy as he's there?
Well, first of all, we need to understand how the party came into being. The party was a merger, and President Muhammadu Buhari brought in 12 million votes. Historically, and other partners brought in their base. Now today we are pretending as if we have that base, and that base of Muhammadu Buhari today has eroded because he has been tested. Usually when you lead people, people have rebuilt their opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people have reviewed their opinion either positively or negatively about President Muhammadu, but he's not contested. I have been to meetings where the vice president, the Senate president, and quite a number of stakeholders warned that without Buhari, this party can collapse. I am not saying we are not making effort to reach out to people. The problem is we are reaching out to very few people who are seen to be the owners of the system. That's not how democracy works. I sat here with my colleague and he's saying young people are desperate to take power anyhow. That is 60% of the population you are talking about. My colleague is saying that the party will overflow and they may not need people. I am afraid that is not very democratic. In a mindset, politics is about addition, not subtraction. All I am saying is the state congresses are the most critical. And look at the danger of what we are actually trying to do. We've gotten to a point where we have a transitional committee. Good people. I've seen many of the members are very good people, but they took a very wrong step at the state level. They dissolved the state ESCO and then returned them as caretaker. And now they are in very firm grip of the party, basically imposing their cronies and their loyalists. And they've been around for a long time that they have gotten powerful, that credible candidates cannot challenge their position. When you say there is a peace or you are resolving your issue and it is normal to have rancor, when you muzzle people and they have no power to challenge you now and you think you are peaceful, I am saying, honestly, we should review this strategy. There is a game, there is a rule. We are not going by the rule as at today. We are going by our emotions and our preference, and those preferences are personal. Let me take you to Kaduna, where you mentioned. We should thank El-Rufai for what happened in Kaduna, because he has been able to have the courage to democratically expose himself to a process that revealed our shortcomings in time for us to fix them. We should know that we have been given mandate, and it's an 8-year mandate, and we are more than 6 years into that mandate. We must be able to say, why is Kaduna going that way? Despite all the issues with PDP that we came into, why is Kaduna going that way? And if you go to Kaduna, you will not say El-Rufai is not working. El-Rufai is working, is delivering good things to the people. But there is a political process we are missing here, which is the rule of this game. Scouting for credible, popular candidates and giving them space. Not our cronies, not our boys, not our people. Let me give you an example. In Kano State, where these young men who just appeared on the program were actually complaining or saying they are from a parallel party. I will say to you, the party chairman lost his ward, lost his local government, and lost the metropolitan where we had a problem that led us to inconclusive. And yet, he is still the party chairman today, bringing the same people that he has used to coordinate the election that we lost to put them back at local government level, and then we expect victory. Kano is not just alone in this. Like I said, because these people have been around, the rule of the game in democracy is refreshing the party and refreshing the base.
So you're not confident that somehow, because they always say that somehow politicians are able to pull out a wand, and just when you think, oh, all is going to fall apart, you know, they're able to reach an agreement.
No, there is an agreement between the stakeholders. I have no problem that the crisis management ability of the caretaker committee is excellent, but it is at the very top. And the very top represent only 10% of our party. The problem I am warning here is, because we have run a government, when you actually run a government, when you're coming back to ask for new mandate, what you do is refresh, and you reset, and you re-excite the base. We are basically presenting a group of people that have actually been tested, and the performance, some are good, some are not so good, and because we are in charge and we're in control of the party, we are imposing them on the people. I am saying it's not just about us. It's about the general election where partisan and non-partisan members of our community will decide our fate. If we don't excite the base and we don't refresh our party and we don't create new momentum, then people will say, look, we've tested you. You've done enough. Especially like you said, that most of the support base we have was because of Muhammadu Buhari, especially in the north. And because people feel rightly that they have paid off Muhammadu Buhari, he has 2 terms, he is not contesting again, they have right to shift their loyalty unless we do something different.
Let me say quickly if your colleague agrees with you. Do you agree that President Muhammadu Buhari has been the stabilization force in your party, and that going into the elections, since he's not on the ballot, that could affect your party's chances?
Assuming without necessarily conceding to some of these fundamental flaws, you know, as a result of analysis by political detractors, and also by a section of the media of which I am part of, you know, in trying to make analysis on issues that seem not to be the correct perspective of what is happening. You see, let me tell you one thing, Magwe. President Muhammadu Buhari is a stabilizing factor, whether we like it or not. We are not hoping that President Muhammadu Buhari will die in 2023. Whether we like it or not, he will be there. Even if he's going to hand over, he's going to be on our campaign train, because I have been the National Director of Publicity of APP from 2001 up to 2010. So I can tell you that I have gone to almost everywhere in Nigeria with the president.
So you think
and
that
he still agreed that this country is undergoing some problems.
Sorry, Mr. Modibo, let's throw this conversation now to my colleagues in Lagos. Gentlemen.
All right, gentlemen, let me ask you. Let me start with you, Mr. Mogaji. This Congress across the states, the fact that it's going to hold, because we don't know the way it's going to turn out, to what extent do you think it will go in reconciling those, several blocks in the party?
Well, honestly, that depends largely on how transparent and how credible the process will be allowed to go. I believe that state congresses are very key. In the federation, the states are the major drivers of the politics and the development of the nation. And I believe that it is the right thing to do for APC to subject itself to the process of getting new leaders. The major challenge, as we've been speaking, is how will it go? In what way will the leadership be allowed to emerge? I very much hope that the atmosphere of transparency that will be seen and be perceived to be implemented by people will be the rule of the game. I believe that there are states that have issues that no matter what we do, we will have to come out with some reconciliatory activities after the congresses. But this is what happened with every contest. No matter how any individual assume his or her popularity, when you subject the process to a fair contest, that individual will then realize his or her level of acceptability within the public. And if that person loses in the process, then you do not end up with a challenge or a complaint, because the process is fair and is transparent and it is publicly witnessed. Our party prided itself that we are a public-based progressive party. There were times we were talking about basically carrying out internal primaries through our own internal Congress, through individual members' vote. We have tried that and we have seen the result. There are times when we go into delegate-based election, and then now we are dominantly talking about consensus. You are constraining the choices of people as you progress from an open, transparent choices by individual members to delegate system. And now you are even more constraining from delegate system to a consensus. The problem with this consensus is who are in the room and what criteria are they using to pick the candidates that we all endorse at the end of the process that we present. And what mechanism do we have to feel and to gauge the population that this choice is right? If we don't position all of this in a democratic space, then we will have to face the general public in an election. And most of the time, those aggrieved individuals are the ones that will basically design a failure strategy around our candidates. So my take is this is a very good transitional democratic move by our party, and it will help us exit the crisis of leadership up to the point where we will go into a national Congress and elect the national leaders, and then come out and face the issue of bringing out our candidate for election.
All right, Mr. Modibo.
The golden rule is the game has a rule, and if we don't go by the rule, we will miss the major reason why this is happening.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Modibo on this.
Invite new members.
Okay, pardon me on this. Let me bring in Mr. Modibo. Well, even though you refer to some of these things as fundamental flaws, but it comes across as though you do not necessarily think that, well, this is so much of a challenge that, the party needs to worry about. Is that right?
You see, Mr. Chamberlain, by nature, I'm an incurable optimist. In whatever I do, maybe it's because of my experience in politics. I've been there since 2001 as a Nigeria Director of Publicity. Let me reiterate again. I know, as a matter of democratic principles, norms, and what have you, a political party is never a mosque or a church where people just follow what the priest says. It is a market square. And therefore, the more the merrier. And this is the beauty of democracy. I want to tell you, without any fear of contradiction, that the processes of which we're undertaking now is okay. With time, with these panels, appeal panels and what have you, we also have people of conscience and wedding. APC is never lacking in men and women of valor and candor that have been so perfect, they have had that experience of real democratic, putting in democratic structures for conformity with global trend of democracy. And therefore, I want to assure you that in spite of all these problems that we've had here and there, or we're having here and there, with the internal party mechanism of conflict resolution, I can tell you that give us time, we'll sit down, we'll resolve our problems, whatever it is. Joy is better than war. Therefore, we believe as Democrats, as progressives, this issue of consensus, to me, it is a bridge building mechanism because it helps in avoiding a lot of rancor. Agreed that some people will definitely, because of interest, will definitely feel bad, in the process of trying to get power. But we have to look at the national interest and the party interest. What are we looking at? Under the present circumstances, Nigeria, under the APC, is a formidable political party that is out to give dividend of democracy to Nigerians. We've seen so far how this government have been doing, in spite of all the political and economic problems that have confronted this country. We've been trying to see how we could assist in at least tackling the security problem, looking at corruption and also laying fundamentals on the issue of putting in infrastructure in the country. Agreed, people have been having problems in Nigeria, but we want to appeal. We want to also tell Nigerians that we're really sorry that some hardships are there under our party, but these hardships are sacrifices that are meant to cushion the effect of hardship in due course. These are sacrifices that Nigerians will put in for the betterment of society in due course. Honestly and sincerely, all the network of roads, all the social infrastructure, in due course will see the benefit. And therefore, now, as we move into the phases of these congresses, APC as a political party, under Mayamala Buni, as a caretaker committee chairman, has been putting in place square pegs in square holes. He has been trying to see the possibilities of bringing in consensus, bridging consensus so that the old brigades and the new ones will come to be harmonized. I can tell you that indeed we are going to look at this issue from a very wider perspective. Let us not narrow our gauge towards
Mr. Modibo,
the current situation. Whatever rises up will come down, except age. And therefore,
clearly,
we believe that party democracy, whatever rancorous situation we find ourselves in, we have the internal party mechanism of resolving these conflicts, and also we will make this democracy work. And by the grace of God, I want to contest elections. But under the present circumstances, as we find ourselves, I am a Democrat and I'm a loyalist of the party. I will never say something bad against my party for the purpose of maybe playing to the gallery.
And I think this
is that
Mr.
we should look at the issues
this is probably part of
looking at the politicking of Nigeria or politicking of the APC from the viewpoint of a party that is moving ahead of its time. It's a party that is trying to make formidable input.
Mr. Modibo, if I could just come in now, I think this is at the core of a conversation, perhaps.
If they don't see anything
Mr. Modibo, if you can hear me, I think you've touched on a point that is perhaps at the core of a conversation. I mean, who is the party? I mean, if you say that the leadership has ensured that round pegs have been put in round holes, and I mean, you have people at the grassroots who form the base of the party, who disagree, who say, well, this is not how we think things should go. You then wonder, who do you define as a party? Is a party the leadership? Is it the followership, or is it the convergence of both? Big question. But let me take this back to Mr. Magaji to respond to some of the things you raised. So, Mr. Magaji, Mr. Modibo thinks that this, consensus process is meant to be the bridge building mechanism for all the issues we have seen. In fact, your party constitution in Article 20, of course, gives credence to consensus mode of electing people into positions in your party. But you have time and again said that this needs to be democratic. It needs to be transparent. So whose responsibility is it to ensure that this is transparent? At whose table, on whose table is that responsibility to ensure that this is democratic and transparent? Is it the caretaker at the national level? Is it at the state level? Who exactly?
Okay, first of all, there must be people of conscience. I mean, there must be respect for this game. When people attain power, they do not personalize it, and they do not and must not perpetuate in that position because they came in through the same democratic principles that other people allowed to manifest. The problem we have today is that when people get into power in a democratic manner, because people recognize their potential and they brought them on board through a process, then they jettison the process and they start bringing on board people who they prefer personally or they want to favor. The mechanism of checking that in our party is what I am highlighting is missing, especially at state level. And because we are going into state congresses, it is very likely that we will suffer from that perpetuation of people in power and imposition of their preferred candidates without very clearly defined criteria. Who can prevent that? Like I said, the National Caretaker Committee are people whom I have known personally. They have their capacity, but this is not personal. If you personalize this process, you're missing the point. This is institutional. If the rule of the game is not clearly spelled out, as you said, consensus is part of it, how is the consensus derived? How is it achieved? Who are involved? What is their allegiance and interest? I have said this before. There are people who lost election totally, and they are still given the driving seat of our party to take us to where? To another loss? This is what I think the National Caretaker Committee should be very careful about. The best way to gauge the pedigree of a politician is his or her past election records. I don't have any personal agenda around this issue.
So in other words,
two things. One, popular politicians who have won election time and time again, we know them. We know people who have people. And the second one is to open up this party for younger elements who are vibrant, passionate, and very patriotic to come into our party so that they will bring their young colleagues who represent greater majority of the voting population.
In other words,
I have
in other words, Mr. Magiji, just a moment. Pardon me. Pardon me. In other words, you're saying, for that first point, you're saying that maybe state executives that did not win elections or have not had good track record in terms of winning elections should be put aside, and the ones that have perhaps a good track record or a good followership should be made leaders. Am I right?
Right, because why are you changing leaders? The reason the party constitution provides a period where you go look for leaders is because you want to refresh the interest of the public on the party.
But aren't they meant to be,
test a leader,
Mr. Magiji, aren't they meant to be elected as well? Wouldn't that be an imposition? Aren't they meant to be elected as well? So if you're saying set aside the ones that have not won elections, bring in the ones that have, at least that have a good track record. I mean, they're meant to go through elections. Wouldn't that be some sort of imposition? I mean, back to square one, which you're complaining about?
You have said. I've said there are three methods of producing leaders: the Congress of the members, the delegate election, and the consensus. I am saying if you are going through consensus, I bet you if you subject these leaders to election, they will lose because they lost before. So it's already fait accompli. So I'm saying if you're going to do a consensus and you're sitting in a room on behalf of the members of the party, then you should look for the pedigree and track record of the individual you are bringing as leaders. You do not bring a person who loses election and say, I would like this person to rule the party. On whose behalf and for what reason? He has lost before, and the people have complained over and over again. I have seen this in many states. I've read this in many states. I have had this from many members that These people are just basically putting people who serve their own personal interest. And that is what I am warning here. We are at a point where we have to tell ourselves the truth, because if we don't, I don't want in due course that my good friend here keeps saying we will solve our problem. I want it solved, in the process minimize. It's a democratic process, there will always be issues, but when the process is transparent, when the issues come out, even the complainant can judge for himself.
All right, let me bring him in.
She lost the election.
All right.
All I am saying is, this is a golden moment for APC. We have had Buhari and Tinubu, who have merged together, who have brought their political pedigree of winning election and won the election of 2015 and 2019. We now have to look for people who are capable of winning election again, who are popular, who respect democracy, who can deliver the dividend of this democracy. Because the second thing is not just the process of getting into this office, but also what will the people do? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the passion? Do they have the empathy for the people, so that they can get more support when they hold offices?
All right, let me bring in Mr. Modibo on this. Mr. Mazu, we'll get your point, though. Let me turn to Mr. Modibo and ask him. Now, you know, after that judgment, the Supreme Court judgments for the Ondo State governorship elections, there were different schools of thought as to what should happen moving forward. For instance, one of the senior lawyers in your party, who is at the ministerial level, they suggest that the party needed to sack Buni and every other person holding executive office and immediately suspend the planned congresses, because if they continue, it may not just turn out well for the party. What do you think about that school of thought?
Thank you very much for that wonderful question, Mr. Chamberlain. But before I go to that question, let me state here that I always rely on the philosophical dictates of Joseph Santayana, that famous historian and philosopher, who says, if experience is not retained, infancy is always perpetual. Those that fail to remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Therefore, I cannot remember in the history of this country, since the APC came on board, when we've lost election. We've all won our 2 elections. So I don't know from which basis Mr. Mohamed Mazu is talking about these people losing elections. From which viewpoint? We won 2015, we won 2019. So on which basis is he talking that we have people that currently, that are currently spearheading the operational possibility, the operational dictates of the party as of now that have failed? They have not failed. Have you ever seen a child passing exams and you want him to repeat the class? If I have the latitude, those people that have been tested and trusted must be given the possibilities with possible infusion of the new people, because these young boys or young ones that are trying to come, they don't have the experience. They don't have the political expediency. But we had people that are there that could be fused together with the new ones so as to make a formidable front to move forward. Now, let me come to a point. In this analysis of the Silk, Festus Keyamo, who is a minister in the government, I think, to me, and this is my personal opinion, I strongly believe that his input was brought out of genuine concern for the party. And I think we have to consider the issues he has raised. I also believe that those in opposition that also stated that what he said couldn't have been the truth should also be looked at. All of them, to me, they all have points. You see, the Nigerian political system, the Nigerian judicial system is in such a way that if you don't test something through the crucible of the networking of the judicial system, you might not be able to get it. All arguments canvassed. The Festus Keyamo argument that has been canvassed, I think it has some merits. The opposition that has also stated, canvassed against Keyamo's analysis also have credit. To me, it has to be tested in court of law, because the law is an ass. And therefore, if you don't test, the advocacy matters. If Festus Keyamo goes to court tomorrow and gives background, gives advocacy, convinces the judge on the potency of his submission, he may likely win the case.
Why does he want to? Why would he want to do that? I mean,
No, I'm just giving an example. Just an example.
I'm there. I'm also trying to, you know.
Yes, no, he wouldn't do that. But
yeah,
what
that's
I'm saying,
why would he want to do that? What he's saying is take heed from the ruling of the Supreme Court on a particular matter, and that's his own legal advice. And it seems that
you see,
people are asking him to go to court to test it.
No, he wouldn't have gone to court. Oh, I'm only giving an example. I am not saying he will go to court. What I'm saying is, if there is any analysis or anything, it has to be tested in a court of law. If it's not tested,
do you really want to take that risk?
No. What we're saying in this circumstance is, Festus Keyamo has merit. The other group too, they have their own merit. This is my personal opinion, and therefore the need for our party to sit down and look at the two issues from a very open and pragmatic perspective. We have an open mind to study the two situations and come to a consensus. I believe that in a democracy, I always repeat, consensus is very important, because I know the dangers associated with going into a field as a divided house. A divided house is bound to fail, it's bound to collapse.
No,
and therefore,
the opposite of consensus is not division.
No, of course.
That's not the opposite. I mean,
No.
because you said that you believe in consensus, and then, you know, instead of going into something with a divided house. The opposite of consensus is not division. The opposite of consensus is that we vote. That's what it is.
No, I disagree with you, Mawwe. Consensus building presupposes. Go and look at it from a different perspective. I'm coming. Let me learn. Consensus building presupposes that there is harmony. There's peaceful coexistence. There is that networking.
I agree completely.
Good.
There is
So
consensus building, but
Yes.
when you talk about a consensus candidate,
Yes.
that's a different.
So what is the difference?
That's a different
it's
kettle
not
of fish.
consensus and consensus.
No.
So what are you talking about?
You have to. In some instances, you must vote for that candidate to
No.
turn up. You don't think
No,
so?
it's not necessary.
So you're against democracy, even
No.
though you talk about consensus in a democracy?
I believe in consensus, Markwe.
What exactly?
But consensus,
what then is a democracy to you?
Excuse me.
No, let me
Consensus
finish.
does not mean voting.
What is a democracy to you?
Democracy is all about mass participation of people in electoral process to bring democrats online.
Mass participation?
Yes,
How?
government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
How
by
do
being
these
constitutional.
people come about?
Good. The issue is, if we're talking about consensus, it's a natural building mechanism within a polity. It's part of the game, Markwe. Whether we like it or not, consensus presupposes that people will come and sit down, whether they vote or not, if they agree.
Do you know why?
If there is total agreement that, look, we want this person, it's
I'm
consensus.
chuckling because there are Democrats who exactly do not like elections.
It's a normal thing.
You strike me as a Democrat who doesn't like elections.
No, I like elections. I believe that's why I'm putting myself forward to contest elections. I'm not afraid of elections, but let me tell
But
you.
you don't like internal party elections.
There is no politician that is not afraid of elections, including even the president himself. Because you are not sure where it goes.
That's what I'm saying.
Goes.
So isn't that what really makes a Democrat a Democrat?
That is
that you're able to face the fear of elections that you have and say, despite the fear that I have, I still put forward myself for these elections.
You see, under this circumstance, Mark, what we're saying is, if you cannot get consensus, go and do elections. You vote. What we're saying, we're bringing ourselves out for elections. We're not afraid of elections because we've been there, we've been seasoned, we've been tested and trusted in elections, and therefore we're not afraid. But the only thing
I'm not
is,
talking about you.
What I'm talking
your
about,
party.
APC.
I'm
APC
talking,
as a political party.
and you just said that there's no Democrat who's not afraid of elections.
Of course.
But let me quickly ask
Of course.
for Mr. Mwazu's closing comment on this one as we wrap up now. This sale of forms have already begun, and you're going to go to this in October. How confident are you that some of the rancor will be resolved before October?
It will not be resolved before October, but it can be resolved through the process. There is one line in that statement that was released by APC Secretary. He said that the sale of forms commences on the 2nd, on the 5th, that's tomorrow, and any candidate who is denied a form at state level should come to the national headquarters to purchase his form. This is absolutely amazing because it opens up the avenue for the national headquarters to see the issues we are discussing now. There will be many candidates that would be denied the ability to get a form, much less to contest this election.
Will you be buying a form?
I am not contesting for the state party chairman. I'm contesting something else in the state.
Okay. What about you?
Well, I'm putting myself forward to contest elections at the national level. And I strongly believe I have what it takes.
I was just asking if you're buying a
Yes,
form
no, no.
for the state congresses.
I have what it takes in the APC because I have been there right from the time of APP, NPP.
But you,
as a loyal party man.
will you back down if the process now comes to elections, or would you want them to do it through consensus?
No, if there is consensus building mechanism, so be it. I'll be ready to submit that because I'll be ready to submit myself because I am a Democrat. First and foremost, and also a loyal party, a loyalist of the party. Whatever the consensus building mechanism dictates, I'll be ready to comply.
All right, we'll see how it eventually goes. As you rightly heard, sale of forms opens tomorrow ahead of the congresses, the state congresses, sometime in October. Gentlemen, we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Ibrahim Modibo is a stalwart of the All Progressives Congress and also a political analyst. And we also have had Muazu Magaji, who is a former member of the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council. Once again, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Well, we'll take a break at this point, and when we come back, we'll be switching gears to something else. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Yes, we're turning our attention to the judiciary, a very important part of any democracy. And we've got, as you've seen in that welcoming slide, Mr. John Aikpokpo Martin, who is the first vice president of the NBA. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning, Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, having, listened to the AGF, President of the Court of Appeal, that several questions actually come to mind. Yeah, much as the judiciary, the last hope of the common man, but it appears as though they themselves lead a lot of hope at this point in time, because the issues that the President of the Court of Appeal raised, quite concerning to a lot of Nigerians who heard it. It's got to do with the remuneration. And if I could just reference some of the items stated there, where she said that the CJN, for instance, as at today, takes home 279,497 naira as monthly salary, while the justices of the Supreme Court go with 206,425 naira. Then the President of the Court of Appeal herself receives 206,425 naira per month. And then the justices on the bench of the Court of Appeal go home with 166,285 naira per month. So if they're asking the judiciary to, be up and doing, how come that this is the situation at this point in time? Is it that we're glossing over this matter, or what?
Well, thank you. When I read in the news yesterday what the Honorable President of the Court of Appeal said, I was very, very shocked, because we all know that I don't think even directors receive as low as that in the civil service. And the proper body to blame is the commission that fixes salaries for judges and presidents and the governors. If they have been up at doing, I'm very sure they will have reviewed the salaries over the years. And the fact that the salary has not been reviewed since 2007, that is almost very long now, shows that there's a problem, there's a rot in that particular commission, and that in fact this particular call calls for the president to again take a look, or the National Assembly take a look at that body and overhaul it. There's something not right over that. And when we even think about it, the doctors are always on strike, asking for better salaries and remuneration. And meanwhile, a critical arm of the government, the society that caters for the rights of every other person, is they are receiving the salaries that so low that is so appalling that it's shameful to even hear. Nobody would have thought that their salaries were that low until we heard it yesterday. So the call by the President of the Court of Appeal is a right call to make at this time.
It's kind of, when you say that you were shocked, many are shocked at hearing that you were shocked, because they thought it is the members of the public that will be shocked, and they expect, you know, those in the legal profession that this might not be news to them, especially on the back of the recent strike protest about financial autonomy across states. They would have thought, well, they all know this, and this is part of what that they are all advocating. But then you say that it's shocking. Does that then mean, or is it, can you describe this as being part of the fundamental reasons why it will be difficult to stamp out corruption in the judiciary if this is not addressed?
Yes, first and foremost, we need to draw the distinction between the salaries of judges and the issue of judicial autonomy. From constitutionally, the salaries are fixed. The judiciary cannot even fix salaries for themselves. It is fixed by a constitutional body. So whether there is judicial autonomy or not, the salary will always remain constant, except and until the commission responsible to fix their salaries does that. So the issue of financial autonomy does not necessarily come in. Then on the issue of the JUSUN strike, as it were, yes, when the autonomy comes in, you find out that the other surrounding services like working environment, the courts, cars, the training, and so many other things will now work in harmony with enhanced salary when the commission is doing its job. So now the question is, if a man of that status who was practicing as a lawyer for so many years and probably was a very successful lawyer, then went to the High Court, or in the High Court is a judge of the High Court now, or a judge of a justice of the Court of Appeal, or a justice of the Supreme Court, and is receiving that amount that even directors or even level 15 officers in the federal service are receiving more than, then there's no incentive. At that point, you put them at the peril of corruption. They are to listen to some of money, making money extrajudicially or extra-legally. So it is extremely very necessary that the members of the judiciary are cocooned from the outside influences of corruption. I will know we are in a very corrupt system or a very corrupt society where you cannot rule out the fact that they are under constant temptation. So it's a given that we expect. In fact, the NBA is now going to take up this fight because usually the bench, they don't speak for themselves. It's the bar that speaks on behalf of the bench. And having voiced it out, this has never been brought to the knowledge of the bar, to the best of my knowledge. But now having voiced it out, I think it's a crusade which we need to take up.
We're not just talking about the salaries, of the judicial officers alone. It's about the judiciary. And so when they talk about financial autonomy, it's got to do with administration of justice. And that's the holistic picture, because you can't just look at one item in isolation of the others, else it will still amount to the same thing. So that's why all of those issues are being brought to the fore.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with you. What the decision I just made was that so that tomorrow we'll not go back to the fact that, they said there's financial autonomy now in the judiciary. How come they're still complaining about the issue of salary? So they must go in tandem. They must work hand in hand to enhance justice delivery. And on the issue of judicial autonomy, I have said earlier that if you look critically at the model of the federal government, which they seem to talk so much about, they're so proud of, there's really no autonomy even at the federal level. The state government, I read a statement by JUSUN that only about 8 states or thereabout have passed the financial autonomy bill, despite the agreement reached sometime in May. So you find out that Nigeria is just a country going around in circles. The legal system, the legal profession, the judicial system is a very critical aspect of governance. That I don't know why the other arms seem to just disregard it. But when they have problem, they now come, maybe because they think that you can at least get what they want by way of corruption or otherwise. I don't understand what is going on. But we still look forward with hope that as more as we agitate, as more as we call for this right, that we make progress. But we are making progress too slowly, and it's not good for the well-being of the nation.
Well-being of the nation, yes. In fact, well-being of the judges themselves. I saw those figures. I was shocked, as you were shocked, and I believe a lot of Nigerians were shocked. And the question that came to me was, so how have they been surviving? Because I imagine they have children, they have responsibilities. I mean, they had to go on break, right? So what happened during that break? I mean, did they just have to stay at home, you know, just managing the 206,000 or 279,000? What is it, basic salary or the whole package? I mean, lots of questions were coming to mind. And I just recalled, I mean, you referenced that even directors in ministries don't earn that little. I've never heard directors complain about their salaries. I've never heard ministers say we're earning this little, or even members of the National Assembly per se. If anything, people even complain that they perhaps earn too much. So when you look at, I mean, the role of the judiciary in a democracy and the government, it's meant to be a major arm of government. It's not different levels. It's meant to be, at least from things we saw in school, it's meant to be on the same level, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. So seeing those figures and seeing what we've seen play out, just on strike, financial autonomy, so how much really, in the Nigerian context, is the judiciary really an arm of government?
Well, I think the greatest challenge the judiciary has is the fact that traditionally they don't speak and they don't speak out. They're not expected to speak out. They're not expected to complain. However, by the traditions of the legal profession, they are supposed to put all these things before the bar. The bar speaks on behalf of the bench. Now, like I said just now, like I said, I was surprised and I'm shocked. This is the first time I've heard that this is how much they receive, because they've never let out exactly how much they receive. If they have informed the bar, then we must be speaking on their behalf. So I want to urge the judiciary that the times are changing, and in Nigeria we live in peculiar times. Because traditionally they cannot speak does not mean that they don't have to speak. They have to speak to us, so that we now have to speak to the world and speak to government and take up the agitation. Because if they keep mute, and just imagine at that age, at that level, at that age, a man is still a TV in this inflationary economy. Man, it's better to say that the judiciary is not a career job. It's not a job anybody will wish to go into, except the other reasons why he has to go into the judiciary. It does not enhance at all the future of any person and the future of his generation. Because, like you said just now, they have children, they have houses, they need to go on vacation, they need to take care of their medical needs and so many other things that come to it. And the societal expectation that you are a justice of the Supreme Court, you are a justice of the Court of Appeal, you are a judge of the High Court. It's extremely appalling. In fact, it's a shame to the country that judges in Nigeria receive that low. And we are calling on the federal government at this stage to take up this matter as an issue of emergency. Because without happy judges, then we don't have a judiciary. That is just the truth of the matter. There's no way to say. We have said it over and over again. No point to overstate it. But however, the NBA will take up this issue strongly from this point.
I mean, maybe I should just stress this a little bit. I mean, just to make the point, because we don't want to discuss this at the beginning of another legal year next year and still see the same figures. Yes, you say that, I mean, they're meant to be seen and not heard per se, and I mean, rightly so. But I mean, you see them, and I mean, don't you notice that perhaps they're not happy? I want to imagine that if you don't know how much a man earns, at least you can tell from the kind of life the man lives. I mean, the kind of reality, the person's outlook, the person's look, and I mean, I'm sure you understand what I mean. So is that something that was never noticed, was never seen?
Yes, we couldn't have easily noticed. Let me explain why we couldn't have easily noticed. Because almost all judges have official cars, and they don't interact socially the way every other normal Nigerian socializes. So we see them only in official capacities. And usually when you see them in court or you see them in valedictory court sessions, in such occasions, they are properly dressed in their ceremonial wears, which every judge has, or see them in their official car. So how will you know except they have to call out? But saying that now, thinking back now, we have had situations where some judges have been indicted for receiving gifts from senior lawyers. Now I cannot draw the connection. They find it very difficult to refuse a gift from a friend when you know very well, or when you have issues you have to sort out. So when you have issues to sort out, you want to pay rent, you want to send your children to school, and somebody you have no money, and somebody now gives you a gift of 300,000 naira. Why will not receive it? In fact, it really not in retrospect, you cannot understand why a judge can receive 200,000 naira as a gift. It's shameful. It shows that they are concentrated they are in. So the country is responsible for the type of judges we are having, or for the type of judiciary we are having, because we don't cater for their needs, we don't cater for their well-being. And that is, now I'm seeing clearly some of the issues we are having. They are not tempted, and we are all human, at the end of the day, first and foremost, we are all human beings. We are all, we all need to survive. We all need to take care of our family. So despite the fact that they are judges and they cannot be heard complaining, that does not mean that we have to allow them suffer. It's that particular statement made by the Honorable President of the Court of Appeal yesterday is an eye-opener to why some of the things we complain about are happening.
Yeah, and she says that that's been static for 10 years now. But, you know, talking about this matter in relation to what and how the NBA is going to proceed with this moving forward, don't you think that perhaps there should be changes? I mean, you've talked about you know, judges are supposed to be heard and not speak. The NBA didn't know, they would take it up. That speaks to the internal communication. Should something or shouldn't something change? After all, it was at that time reported in 2011 that I think it was lawyers appearing at the UK's highest court didn't have to wear the traditional wig and gown. So they made changes in different areas. So what about here? So clearly, communication are some of the things that needs to be changed here, as you highlighted. Is that right?
Well, society is dynamic. The changes must come in, but the changes must not come just because there must be changes. Those changes must be beneficial. And
this is clearly going to be beneficial, isn't it?
Yeah, it must be beneficial. And it is not what happens, everything that happens on the other side of the world that we must pick up. For us in Nigeria, constantly we are trying to evolve, but some of these things are the legal profession, as it were, it does not have a central control unit. We have the body of benchers, we have the NBA, we have the NJC, you know. So those people, these bodies must work in synergy at this particular time for us to move forward, also for us to have be able to have changes. And if you look at most of the laws, why some people are complaining about why are no changes in the legal profession the way we need to. If you look at most of the laws, most of these laws were made during the military time and were just carried over to the democratic time. The Attorney General of the Federation is very central to so many of the things. If you don't read the laws, it's the Attorney General of the Federation who is the chairman of this, who is the chairman of that, who is the chairman of this, who is the chairman of that. So if the Attorney General himself is not up and doing on so many issues, then the progress and the changes within the legal profession will be very difficult to come by. And now, if you make attempt to start to change this law so that you remove some of this responsibility from the Attorney General, what you actually go to get, you are also going to have a situation of a resistance from that office, not wanting to let go some of those powers. So we really need to look at the laws of Nigeria for us to be able to move forward, because at the end of the day, the NBA is about the rule of law. We can only support and canvass what the law supports and not what we think the law should be. We might canvass and agitate for what we think the law must be, but we might not be able to actually change them without changing the laws themselves. So at this stage, as we move forward to this new legal year, we also have to go back again to the National Assembly, because the Legal Practitioner Act is before the National Assembly. There are so many other laws that are at the National Assembly. We have to look at the suggestions coming from the Nigerian Bar Association so that some of those changes can be made institutional, can be made statutory. But without them, we can only just mouth and complain.
So I take it that you say that you expect the Attorney General to take some of these issues to the National Assembly and ensure that they're resolved once and for all.
Yes.
Okay, so let me take on another issue. We've talked about this, I mean, the finances, which is quite important. But then the reality also of people that seek justice is another thing. And I recall that a non-governmental organization, Access to Justice, recently voiced its concern about, you know, this vacation and the fact that they look back and say just last year we had COVID-19 that hampered court activities. There was EndSARS protests. Don't forget, there was JUSUM strike as well. So put together, you had about 6 months of a lull. And for them, they thought having to have this 1.5, 2 months break or summer vacation, as it is called, was perhaps too much. And I don't know if you shared the same concerns. Because yesterday, we just saw a jailbreak in Kogi State. A majority of people that actually, broke out of jail were people awaiting trial. And they point to the figures across the country and thought, I mean, if we have this big emergency on our hands, is there a way around it? Can we stagger these breaks? Say, okay, some go at this time, some stay back, so we can dispense, these cases speedily?
Yes, I agree with that sentiment. But however, just let me first of all go to in the past 2 years in Nigeria, there have not been proper practice of law in Nigeria because in last year we have COVID-19. As we're leaving COVID-19, we have the NSAS riot. Then after, NSAS protests. Then thereafter we have the JUSU strike. So we found out that we have not had a lot of time in course this past 2 years. However, I was of the same sentiment before that why should they even go on a vacation? But I had the opportunity of interacting with some judges, and they explained that some of them have already fixed those periods for their medical vacation outside the country, and that forfeiting it will incur a lot of expenses on their side. That's one. Then secondly, that even this JUSU strike, they could not do anything because the expectation was that the strike was going to be called off next week. So they were in a state of stagnation or whatever. So now that they have the vacation, they just need to take it and rewire and rewind themselves back to normal business. So some of the judges, some of the courts did not take 6 weeks as expected. But again, you have to find out that this vacation is statutory. It's a law that made provision for vacation at the period of vacation. The only thing that the law did not make, they left at the discretion of the courts is how long it will take, but not more than so and so period. So some judges, some court jurisdiction decided to take the full 6 weeks, some took 4 weeks and whatever. But I think they actually needed the vacation, but it couldn't have been, maybe 3 weeks would have been enough. But however, it has happened, and the federal system is already back. Some of the states will start coming back to activities from next week and the upper week. And we look forward to a more fruitful year. We hope that we will not have the type of protest we had in Nigeria last year, or COVID-19, or anything that we shut down, so that we can face the business of justice, and those people who need access to justice, we actually have access to justice. Apart from that, then the system itself will need to be rejigged to ensure that this speedy dispensation of justice is extremely very important. And we want to please appeal to the judges to at this time not allow for unnecessary adjournment of cases. They should just please try and come to court as early as possible, treat the matter, so that, because it's like we're in an emergency, we have to catch up for the past 2 years in cases. There's cases that have been lying down for the past 5 years that just in one particular stage we have not moved forward, and it's extremely necessary that we move forward as soon as possible. And this have to take personal sacrifices from the judges, from the lawyers, and from every person concerned in the justice system. And I appeal to everyone who is in the justice system to please take a step back and look at it, and that we really have to take some personal discomfort to ensure that justice dispensation in Nigeria moves speedily this next legal year that we are entering.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask you whether you also agreed with the recent intervention of the Chief Justice of Nigeria in this experte mess. But let me quickly take you back to the issue of welfare. We've seen a number of states intervene in what is going on, I mean, in terms of remuneration and compensation of judges. It has been received with some criticism. We saw it in Rivers in recent times, where houses were built for judges, cars were given to them. Lagos State, way before now, under the current vice president, interestingly, when he was Attorney General, there were major reforms in the judiciary, but not without some criticism. Some people think that the executive arm of government really should have no business. They should let judges determine what it is that concerns them welfare-wise, because they believe that there could be some undue interference, in the judicial process as a result of that. What are your thoughts on that?
I've said it severally that the executive have no business with the welfare of members of the judiciary. One, who build houses for the governors, who build houses for the commissioners, who build for the legislators? Nobody. So why should they come to the? Why should they look at judges as babies? In fact, when you look at the three arms of government, I don't think that on the average, the intellectual capacity or the integrity of any arm of the other two arms of government is higher than that of the judiciary. So why do they think that they can sit in their offices and decide what the judiciary should, what the handout they should do to the judiciary, then come on television to come and tell people that we build houses for the judiciary? The judiciary itself can build houses for themselves. That's what we are saying about this financial autonomy. When the financial autonomy is up and doing, and the money budgeted for the judiciary is there, they know exactly.
It's another problem. You don't think that could create another problem in the sense that the judiciary will now be involved in awarding contracts and building houses and things of this? Isn't that a distraction from what the judiciary should be doing?
No. That is a misnomer. That is not proper. See, first and foremost, we have in the judiciary, we have the Judicial Service Commission. We are the civil servants of the judiciary, just like we have the National, I think the National Assembly Commission, and we have the Civil Service Commission. Those are the person that serve. Those are the body that service the other bodies. So in the judiciary we have the Judiciary Commission, who are civil servants that will ordinarily service the judiciary. So you don't expect the chief judge to be awarding contract. No. You have the director of administration, you have the chief registrar. Those are their duties. So the duty of the CJ is just to ensure that there's prudence and there's probity. So if we have the commission, which is the civil service, and it's running on its own, why will everybody be talking about distraction? There can't be any distraction at all. In other realms where the judiciary have their autonomy, are there distractions in the United States of America, United Kingdom? Why is Nigeria will be different? Why do they think that the judiciary cannot handle themselves? Are they babies? In fact, it is extremely appalling.
So you obviously share the criticism. Let me quickly ask you about the recent intervention of the CJN into this ex parte matter order. You think that is in order?
Yes, it is in order, to the extent that I have to explain so that people don't get a wrong impression. The CJN sits on 2 seats. He sits as the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and he sits as the chairman of the NJC. Now, as chairman of the NJC, he has the right, because it is the NJC that deals with the discipline of judges. So he must look at the discipline of judges, whether from the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. It is the NJC that deals with it. So if but the problem we have been having now, and some of us have been agitating, that the problem we have been having now is that the NJC always wait for petition to come first before they act. But now we are not in Nigeria is no longer we are not in the normal state. We are in an abnormal state. So some abnormalities need to happen to reset or reconfigure the system. Now, for the first time, I heard that the CJN had ordered that an area court in the FCT should face the disciplinary committee. He has not disciplined that judge. He has just asked the body that is necessary to do that job, please do your duty. And if such intervention comes up from time to time, I think it will be better for Nigeria. So for me, the CJN...
if you could just one more thing before we go, just as we wind down now. If you will choose one key thing that will be topmost on your list when it comes to reforms in the judiciary to, of course, improve the process, what will that be and why?
The first will be the appointment of judges, because the man that sits as a judge, there are so many things that are involved. That a judge that is made in the High Court today has the capacity to be the CJN, has the capacity to be the president of the Court of Appeal, has the capacity to be a chief judge. It is when a man who ought to sit on that seat gets on that seat that will be the necessary changes we are asking for. They will have the temerity, the courage to take it out. But when persons who ought not to be on the bench, now they are get appointed as judges, when they come to the controlling mind of those bodies, they do nothing. They just look at it and the rot continues. So we need to again look back at the appointment of judges, because those appointed today are going to go into the aims of affairs of those bodies in no distant future. And we need courageous persons, men of integrity, men of intellectual capacity to be able to move Nigeria forward. So the appointment of judges is key, always key. I keep saying it and repeating every now and then. It is key. But Nigeria will gloss over it. We never really look at it. And that's why we're having the problem we're having. Because if some judges, some of these ex parte orders are conflicting judges, we are saying, they will not happen when persons who ought to be on that seat are on that seat.
All right, then, Mr. John Aikpokwo-Martins, first Vice President of the NBA. Thank you very much indeed for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, then. So we've got some messages, don't we?
Oh, yes. Let's start with AGK's mail. And this one concerns the conversation we just had. This is what he says. As much as I detest the salary packages of our judges and justices, this should not be an excuse for corruption.
Well, Badi Emmanuel switches to the APC. He says, the base of the APC Democratic Party has been tested. The party should be mindful of that. Even from the 2 party members interviewed this morning, one is holding to the shadows of taking reality, while the other is basically presenting the reality of truth. Different strokes for different folks.
Nakena says independent candidacy and investigations of funds accruing to political parties must be vetted by EFCC, SFU, and the ICPC, must be empowered by the extant laws of the National Assembly to look into the books of political parties and arms of government for proficiency and accountability. I'll quickly take this on. Barak G. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it says that consensus and leadership. It says, in all that I heard and was learning, two things came to my mind. A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. Once power is achieved by consensus, this power must achieve purpose and affect change. He said both of the above were said by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Well, glad you learned something on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sending in your mails. And Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, don't forget to catch our exclusive interview with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, on political paradigm. It starts in about 2 minutes. So stay with us. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Triangle, so have a good one.